is the CanMar Morning Talk Show, a fresh take on what's happening in the cannabis and psychedelic spaces. I'm your host, Melissa Jane Saidi. Join me as I sit down and have thought-provoking conversations with some of the industry's top experts and trendsetters from around the globe. First of all, just want to welcome you so much to the CanMar Morning Talk Show, and thank you so much for joining us and for being here. It's really great to sit down and have a chat to you today. I'm excited to hear all about your story.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, and I appreciate the invite as well, and I'm looking forward to the conversation with you also. And yeah, no, I'm excited. I always love kind of getting on. You know, it's so funny because there's a part of me that always gets a little nerve-wracked every time I'm going to jump on a podcast or a call. But at the same time, there's a part of me that's excited to always have a conversation, right? It's just kind of finding that balance in between the two things. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this very much.
No, I totally hear you, and I think it's a completely normal human thing. You know, we always get a little bit nervous for
Totally.
these. Then again, the conversations are always so great, so it's totally worth it before the time.
Yeah. Sorry, just looking around for my water bottle. Yeah.
No worries. So I always like to start off kind of just by getting my guests to tell me just a little bit about themselves, a little bit about their backstory. So I'd love it, Dave, if you could just briefly introduce yourself to our CanMar audience, how you got into the cannabis space, and what specifically drew you to the edibles market as well.
Yeah, so to give you a very quick background where it all kind of ties in together, my background for the last 15 to 20 years, and I always start losing track of time. So I just put like a block of time somewhere in between there. I came from the food. I came from the food and beverage industry. I did both produce and natural foods. We actually, with a company that I was working with previously, prior to getting into cannabis, we were both a farmer. So we had our own produce. We were growing a lot of our own kale, our own chards, carrots, you name it, et cetera, to fresh herbs. And then at the same time, we also ran an import business, both for fresh produce and then also for natural food products. So like we were importing beverages, snacks, et cetera, and then distributing it throughout Canada. And then just a little bit deeper, and prior to that, same thing, being in the food and beverage industry. I worked at a sales agency called Epic Sales and Marketing, where we represented brands like Earthbound Farm Organics, and then with them, and then a couple of companies, we did Earthbound Farm Organics, Bolt House Juices, Gill's Onions, several different large CPG brands, all on the produce natural food side of the business. At that time, I worked for a gentleman by the name of Andy Eustace, and really who I've always considered a dear friend and a mentor to me throughout my years as coming up in the food and beverage industry. And really from there is where I transitioned into cannabis. But my whole background in those 15 to 20 years in terms of food, growing from, I'll call it a merchandiser, into a sales manager and then a national key accounts manager, my biggest thing was trying to find, where those new opportunities were, where growth was based on what consumers wanted. We obviously saw a lot of those trends directed towards natural health and wellness. Obviously you saw it, whether it was, I'll call it like, more, what's it called? More health focused ingredients, cleaner ingredient decks, obviously, again, more produce focused as well. But long story short, when the cannabis industry started to kind of come together around at least from when I started to hear more about it specifically, I know medical cannabis had already come on over 10 years ago, but specifically when I started to hear about medical cannabis and becoming more of a broader subject was around 2016, 2017. And I was working for, again, that produce company at the time, which was International Herbs. And the founder from that company was actually an early investor with a couple of his friends in starting Zenabis. And that was the first time I'd heard about, essentially, again, legalization happening on a broad scale across the country. And I remember first hearing it, I'm like, I've enjoyed cannabis through a lot of my younger years, never for any purposes for medical experience, not for medical purposes per se. Mine was always just recreational.
We would all have those in our teen years, right?
Yeah, totally, right. And then, the experiences that I've had through my younger years and with my friends and all those types of things, and then coming into where I was at that point, moving towards growing my professional career, hearing legalized cannabis, I was like, no way, really? Like, are you sure? Like, is the government really going to allow this, et cetera? And, yeah, right. And then had I not been there, seeing a lot of these things evolve as they were, I probably wouldn't have believed it until the year when it was going to legalize. But obviously seeing how fast things were advancing and then progressing and pushing to keep, essentially them and many others, of course, pushing to make the envelope become what it is now today, is what really, I'll call it, intrigued me in terms of thinking of the legal industry. Then at the same time, around hearing from their side, specifically hearing, their interest in medical cannabis, back in 2016 or so, I was also hearing a lot of the communication happen in the US around, because again, we were always looking at what the food trends were, specifically in the US. We were seeing and hearing a lot of movement around CBD in the US from a food perspective, right? From a food ingredient perspective as a supplement, etc. Essentially comparing it to like vitamin C, where it would essentially be in all these different, formats, whether it be beverages, snacks, etc. And so I started to participate in a lot of these conversations that were happening across North America, and listening and just understanding where CBD was going to go and what was happening, how it was moving from the back end of a natural food store to the front end of a natural food store, and then on aisle ends, etc. And that really started to intrigue me, because then I saw, I'm like, okay, then here's where that next trend is going to move in terms of natural health and wellness and clean ingredient food products. Now I want to learn more about CBD. And so that's when I really decided to take a foot forward step into the cannabis industry. So I approached, this is then at that point now, after learning about things for about a year and a bit, is when I approached the owner at the time and then his partners. And I said, look, I'm going to make a transition. And either that transition is going to include me moving into the cannabis industry full time, and then, working on the sales side with you guys, or I'm going to transition and essentially depart from the company. It was a bit of a risky move.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I stuck to my guns and I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I was serious too at the same time. I'm like, I'm not just playing this as a bluff.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, and I'm going to depart either which way. It's going to be, I join you guys on the cannabis side, or I'm going to depart and then I'm going to go work at another produce organization where I had an offer to go work for some time. And having the conversation with them and letting them understand where my interests were and really kind of driving that side of the business. Obviously I delivered my message with conviction, and they liked what they heard, and they said, okay, look, come over to this side. Right now the industry is just going to start in the next year, so we don't know how much work there really is to kind of get things going, but I guess we'll find out as we get into it. But we like what you're talking about, etc. Let's get moving. And year one, there was no sleep. So it's funny, when they thought there was not going to be much to do, there was a lot to do, because getting set up, a lot of people sometimes, especially if they're not from the sales side, it's not just, hey, going and talking to somebody and then you're done. There's a lot of back end work that has to be done as well, in terms of like product integration, creating products, especially when you don't have a full suite of products. You could virtually, I'll call it visually, create products on your computer, and you can make it look like you've got stuff. And not in any which way saying that this is what they were doing as well, but just in terms of saying, hey, we have something, now we actually have to commercialize it. And then you have to bring in another set of individuals who can actually commercialize those products. Because from a sales end, I'm not a commercial individual, right? I'm not the person who operationally can manage and put those things together. So long story short, all these different pieces had to start coming together, and that's what we worked on during that time frame. Getting the right individuals. They were working on it as well, bringing in individuals, integrating them into the business in order to be able to accelerate the business. And then from my side specifically, again, on sales end, was starting to create contacts with those different, at the time specifically customer-wise, was just provincial governments first. So creating relationships with the provincial governments, establishing, again, a lot of the back-end integration for what we were going to need to actually launch, and then working with those other individuals that were getting included into the company as different units, and essentially start working all cohesively together to be able to actually launch when October hit in 20, I'm already losing my mind, 2018. So yeah, that's really my background, and then how I slowly transitioned into the cannabis industry. And for me, in terms of where that intersection really existed, again, it was finding my way into cannabis through food and natural health and wellness, and then finding that spot that, again, created that interest in it, and then essentially creating that intersection where I was able to transition into it. But at the time when I transitioned into it, edibles still weren't legalized. At the end of the day, for me, getting into cannabis, my true interest was always on the edible side of the business. And I knew that wasn't going to come until 2019. But again, it was coming in early. I always love getting it on the ground floor. I guess I'm...
It's a good to be, right?
Yeah.
You get to see things from from the inception and see how they grow and evolve and build.
It is, for me. I love it. I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. But a lot of people, when you're in the ground floor, obviously you've got to have that tenacity and wanting to keep going, because nobody knows who you are as a new company, and you're really going to break down doors. On the flip side, and I've had this conversation with many people, and they're like, "Oh, this person has this many 10 years of tenure and this and that." I'm like, "That's awesome." Some people can do it all, maybe, but I think some people are designed to do things, again, from ground floor specific, growing something out of nothing when there is nothing. And there's a lot of great people who can do that. And then there's other people that are really well designed to manage a business once it's already as core function and is well established. And then they know from there how to even take it even further. And I think that's the beautiful thing about, again, where everybody has their specialty in terms of what they know how to do. And it really creates a very unique and diversified marketplace as well. Because I would never try and think, hey, I know how to do everything. That'd be ridiculous and a bit foolish of me to think. But I know, hey, I know where my strengths are, and this is what I'm good at. And from there, we're going to need help. We're going to need some additional support to be able to get us to another level from that point forward. But yeah, so that's anyways, long story short, that's how I got into the cannabis industry.
Absolutely, and I really love that. Everyone has their own strengths, and that's why things work the way they work, right? And that, especially hitting the ground floor, starting from scratch, especially in the cannabis space. Certainly not for everyone. You've got to have a thick skin and a kind of a strong backbone, I think. And people just aren't cut for that, right? So some people thrive in a different environment. So I think that's a really good.
Totally. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, I think that, again, everybody's different in which way. But every company I've worked for so far, as I got into food, is pretty much, actually only one. But I was going to say almost all of them were essentially ground floor, and I've just always loved the ground floor. Yeah. I've always ended up, it's so funny. I only looked back on it today. I think it was, as I was thinking about this call, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, because, obviously anybody who's in the entrepreneurial business, who's an entrepreneur, everybody takes risks. And I'm like, I said, how many risks have I taken? I'm like, oh man, I'm like, as I think back, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, actually, yeah. Every single time I decided to take a job, I've always taken the riskier job versus the more secure job, which is kind of funny. I don't know why. I just thought about that today, and I'm like, that's weird.
You're a thrill seeker,
I guess so, yeah.
Some people jump out of planes, you like to get in the ground floor of businesses, lose years worth of sleep,
Yeah, that's right,
yeah. Dave, what are some of the key takeaways from your experience kind of at the beginning of things, because obviously things are a lot different now, and, being with Zenabis in the beginning and, starting, really at the inception before edibles were kind of even legalized. What were some key takeaways you took from that experience that have maybe helped you today?
I mean, the only the difference for me in terms of like when I moved over from produce to cannabis, and it's funny because like in produce they used to say, if you can survive the produce industry, you can survive anything, like no matter what industry you go to, because it's just constantly going, right? It's nonstop. And I felt cannabis was very similar to produce. So I've learned a lot along the way, whether it was from produce coming into cannabis, and then essentially through cannabis though. I mean, you've got to be, I don't know how to put this the right way. You're looking to be very cautious of the individuals that at least I found, and because you're gonna have everybody come out of the blue, especially when cannabis first started, right? Everybody had a story, which was awesome, but everybody's obviously trying to.
Everyone wants a piece of the pie, right?
Well, yeah, what. People would come and be like, yeah, hey, I've got this, they do quick. Everybody's trying, it felt like everybody's trying to do things quickly and then just offload them quickly. And that was, and we're still seeing that today, where the market's not what it was back in 2018, 2019, like even where a license back then, you could sell it for millions of dollars. That doesn't exist today. Not like it did back then. Yeah. But anyways, long story short, one of the biggest things has been, trying to find where truth is in a lot of what's being told. And that's not, again, I'm not trying to say that's for everybody, but that's been my experience. When I was at Zenabis, I had never experienced so much like people knocking on the door because they were all trying to sell something. And it's like, hey, I've got this. I have a hemp field here. You want to buy it? And I'm like, no. And, but the crazy part would be, I remember this one conversation I had with an individual. And we were at an investor conference. This is going back in 2019, I believe it was. And this gentleman approached us and he says, hey, I've got this hemp field, we're generating, I think it was like our CBD is producing around 15% CBD. And we have X amount of acres, all this jazz. And he's like, it'll equate to this much CBD. He says, we're looking to find a partner that wants to buy our business, integrate into theirs. And, he puts a massive dollar value in front of me. And then you start getting, into the conversation with them, which way, again, like at that point, I had no interest in trying to even bring it back to the company to say, hey, this is something we should purchase. But I always like having a conversation with an individual to understand, again, how deeply rooted they are in terms of understanding what they're even talking about. And as you're going down the path of them, and as I'm having this conversation with him, I realize, number one, he's not even producing anything that's legal, because even under hemp, like a lot of the mentality that was happening was because the hemp regulations changed in the US, that a lot of people were thinking the same regulations here. I'm like, hemp regulations are totally different than Canadian hemp regulations. You have to fall within a specific scope of seed varieties to actually grow. So specific genetics. It was a list of like 50 genetics. Anyways, long story short, he went into this whole thing around how they have this amazing CBD. And then again, just diving deeper into the conversation, you find out it's just full of lies.
Yeah.
And you can't even, even if we bought it, if we didn't do proper due diligence and we did end up buying it, we'd be stuck with something that we could do nothing with and that was completely offside. So I saw a lot of that in as I came into the cannabis industry. In produce, I never ran into that, because in produce, already obviously a very well-established industry, even natural foods, when we had anybody who knocked at our door, we already knew who they were primarily. Like, you already knew who some individuals were because they were growing the business, and they'd say, hey, we want to, sell our farm to you, or whatever it is, right? That's a whole different side of it. And this side, you're meeting new people. You have no idea who they are. You're trying to take them for their word. And there's a lot of really good speakers, and then really good salesmen. And then you're like, okay, how much of this is real, right? Yeah. And so what I learned from the cannabis industry, though, was being able to, from another level. And I learned this from people I was around as well, because then I'd pick up on things and I'd ask them questions after, but really being able to evaluate, and I'm not perfect at this, obviously, but it's just something I grew from a strength position, at least I feel like, was really being able to evaluate what people are saying for truth versus lie. And it's sad to some degree to say that, but at the same time, I like it because, again, it's taught me strengths that I didn't have prior to the cannabis industry. Like I knew certain strengths, but the cannabis industry really refined and continue to evolve a lot of those things that I didn't have as strengths when I came into it. And it continued to allow me to evolve as an individual, both from whether just sales or obviously from a business perspective, to really allow me to engage and understand, like, hey, how much of this is truth and how much of it is lies. And then, if there is something there, even out of all of this, is there something we can extract maybe just by a piece, etc. So, yeah, I think that the cannabis industry has been interesting, and it still is to this day. A lot of interesting individuals, very cool individuals as well. But yeah, very interesting people sometimes that you meet along the way. And again, I haven't seen any of that as much as I have so far in the cannabis industry.
For sure. And I think that's the thing, with an industry that is still emerging. We still got a long way to go, especially on a global scale. And there are always going to be people who want to kind of make a quick buck, or I think this is a get rich kind of quick scheme. But so it is a scheme, a valuable thing for you to be able to kind of tell that who is lying and who's kind of telling the truth, because there are a lot of used car salesmen out there. But
and I think that, and you know what's funny, I'm saying that's only and I'm not saying that only exists in cannabis. I know it exists in other industries too. I just hadn't experienced it obviously to the level I did when I came into cannabis. So that part I'm wondering fine. And then really the other thing was really and then, I mean, maybe again it's just that grassroots kind of build up scenario, but for us, like, even as we started our this new venture that we went on with White Rabbit, it was interesting because I never worked with any businesses that were I'll call it from the public markets.
Oh yeah.
So I also got to learn a lot about the public market side of the business, which was really, really eye-opening and interesting. So yeah, I think that overall, I mean, the cannabis industry has only allowed me to develop again as an individual and see so many things that I never got the chance to see before. And learn from. So yeah, no, it's been an incredible ride, and I still love the industry for what it is today. Yeah,
it's a wild ride working in the space, but it's there's never a dull moment, I think.
No, there's never a dull moment at all. That's for sure. Yeah, every day every day is a roller coaster ride. Yeah,
for sure, for sure. And so just going a little bit deeper into, of course, you have quite the tenure in the food and beverage space, as a whole. So we're hearing a lot more about the kind of tourism, consumption lounges, cannabis restaurants, and I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts on this. As somebody who has so much history with food and beverage in general, and do you cook with cannabis yourself? Actually, that's a good question. I should ask you.
So number one to that, let me answer that part because it's the easiest one. I can't cook at all. I suck at cooking. So no, I'm no cook. Not even at home. Okay. I can cook an egg.
Yeah. I feel you on that. That's why I love my egg fry.
Yeah. So no, I know which way I'm gonna cook. I'm gonna give all that to my business partner Kirsten. She's an amazing formulator and cook. So I'll leave that with her from that end. But from the perspective of sorry, actually, could you repeat that question one more time? All of a sudden, I lost my.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, I kind of caught you off guard.
I started laughing there in terms of that. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Canada tourism.
The cannabis restaurants, consumption lounges. Yes. What's in the kind of present and future?
I'm super excited about that. Yeah, in terms of the tourism, I mean that makes total sense. It's funny, like when I was having the similar conversation with somebody else the other day, and I said, similar to how Amsterdam, obviously for all those years, it was recognized as a place for tourism, cannabis tourism. I remember even as I was growing up in high school, I remember lots of friends saying, we're going to go to Amsterdam because they want to go enjoy the cafes. Because really, when I think about Amsterdam, I'm sure it's a beautiful place. I've never been to Holland myself or to Amsterdam. But, I'm like, I wonder what there is to do there. Because in my mind as well, whenever I'm thinking holidays, I want to go to the beach. I want to go somewhere tropical. I'm like, there must be something really, wonderful about this place in Holland outside of just cannabis. Right. And I'm sure there absolutely is. But, thinking about BC and then, or obviously Canada as a whole, but I always think about BC as the ground, as the ground for cannabis. Like a lot of friends that I grew up with, obviously in the industry from a young age, prior to where we, in terms of the industry we have now. But anyways, it's always been a starting ground for cannabis is just so synonymous with British Columbia, right? There's a big underground community that lives here specific to cannabis as well. So yeah, I think that tourism opportunity is incredible. And then not just around cannabis, but what it does is if you bring in all these individuals who, from a tourism perspective, want to come to BC or Canada because of cannabis, then it opens up the door to so much more economically for the country because there's so much beauty here as well. Like, again, I'm just talking about BC because it's in my own backyard here. I'm in Surrey. But, just like people come here for wine tours and then they go to the vineyards, you can come here for tourism. But if there's lounges all over Whistler, Kelowna, if you're in the Lower Mainland, downtown Vancouver, which is a great spot for, partying, etc., whatever it may be, you have access to all these different unique ecosystems throughout the province. And where you can enjoy, some of the best cannabis in the world, which comes from BC. Hence why it was also, illegally, but, hence why it was exported internationally as well, because everybody knows BC bud. So I think that there's such an amazing opportunity on that side, and there's such an amazing and beautiful story that comes from that as well, from the ground up. So I'm very interested. My experience in food and beverage, again, of course, was more on the grocery side of the business, more so than food service. But I've got a lot of friends I got a couple of friends, who have come from the food service side of the business, and their eyes and their ears, I'll call it, are very much attuned to what's kind of happening right here, and they're interested in kind of how it's going to change. And then even from a distribution perspective, wondering, hey, is this going to fall into the hands of the government as well, or if it does go through government, could it eventually go into the hands of larger food service distributors to be able to service, again, whoever those lounges or potentially restaurants might be that do go down that path. But I think that, again, Canada is so well served for it. Again, I'm just talking BC, but there's so many provinces across the country that have different aspects of different beauty that people might want to go visit. And if they can enjoy some cannabis through their travels, I think it's an amazing opportunity. Again, not just for them specifically to enjoy cannabis, but then economically as well for the entire country.
Absolutely. And I think it's a very exciting space. And, for globally, for places who are maybe struggling with their economies. For example, my country, South Africa, we have an absolutely beautiful country. There's a lot to do and see here. But, we struggle economically. And, there's a lot of going on with legalization here, a lot of, kind of boxes that have been unchecked, and we're waiting to see what happens. But if we could have some kind of canna tourism, I think it would be absolutely incredible for our country. So I think the opportunities are kind of endless in this space, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always think that that's what makes everything so exciting. Again, like talking about ground floor, when there's no road built, finding the right path to essentially whatever, finding all the right materials to build the road, I think is the most exciting part. So I think that's, for everybody that's going to start to get onto that side of the industry, as it starts to evolve and grow, it's going to be really fun, exciting, interesting, challenging, all these different things kind of coming together. But I think also that's what creates, that always works to create the best as well at the end of the day, and always makes to create a fun environment and an incredible environment.
For sure, especially if there's a lot of people who are really passionate about it, but people like yourself.
Totally.
The passion that we see, especially in this industry, I think it's really incredible. And that's something I really do love about this space.
Yeah, no, we've been definitely keeping an eye on it, because we've been kind of in the background mentally working on some plans that'll kind of evolve into that side if it does turn on.
Exciting.
Because again, like I was saying, we got friends that come from the food industry. They're same thing. They're like 20 plus years in the food industry. They worked at a high level on the distribution side, et cetera, for food service, specifically for restaurants. So we're very much kind of making sure we, kind of keep those doors open. We're friends anyways as it is, but still just keeping those doors open because of the fact that it's like, hey man, if this turns on, we have some fun ideas for things that we could do for lounges and for stuff like that. Again, more from the edible side, edible/beverages side. But I think it'll be super exciting. Yeah.
That's very exciting. Watch this space, everyone.
Yeah. I heard that in Las Vegas. I haven't been yet, but I heard that in Las Vegas they're going to start opening up. I think it was Las Vegas, right? They were permitting consumption lounges now.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, I can't imagine what a consumption in Las Vegas.
I mean,
they're going to take it to the top, like in terms of experience. Oh, yeah, I'm like, okay, next trip I go, I got to go check it out. Yeah. And I heard some really cool. I was with a friend the other day. We were drinking. We went out for a couple of drinks and some food, and we're sitting down just having a chat, catching up. And he was telling me some experiences he had. I believe it was in Spain, underground consumption lounges, but still as in a consumption lounge. He was just kind of giving me an example of a consumption lounge experience he had, and it was incredible from the entrance way through to almost similar to that, like when you go to a restaurant/bar. Sitting down, they have like TVs, and they even have like a video game consoles and all these types of, again, the environment, the ambience is just set, and lighting, all that kind of things. As we're having this conversation in my head, I was there, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm like, that sounds incredible. I'm like, I can't wait for something like that to happen here. Yeah.
Completely transforms your entire experience. And I mean, it's also part of that community thing of bringing people together to enjoy these products together and enjoy the experience together, which is just, I mean, amazing. Yeah. Come on, people,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
But David, I'd love to talk a little bit more about edibles specifically and White Rabbit, of course, for a moment. So let's start with kind of the story of how White Rabbit started. I mean, you guys started at kind of the beginning of 2020, kind of just before the global pandemic hit. So tell us a little bit about this and how that all happened.
Yeah, so I'm going to quickly expand from Zenabis to where we are now. So just as it came into Zenabis, that was 2018. In 2020 is when I resigned. So me and my business partner, we left Zenabis at the beginning of 2020. So just evolving now out of Zenabis. And then we decided to start our own business venture on the edible side. And the reason we decided to do that outside of Zenabis, it was because Zenabis decided at the time that they were just going to focus on flower. Obviously, at the end of the day, we understand, and even to what we're seeing in the market today, flower is king at the end of the day in terms of total volume, right? 75% of the total market space, et cetera. And so, edibles essentially at the end of the day, really in terms of what's evolved into now around 5%, we understand why people, are the company we were at wanted to focus on that. But for us, again, me and Kirsten both, because Kirsten's background as well came from the food industry. She was both in sales and food formulation. She worked for a large ingredient house, essentially ingredient/formulation house, one of the largest in the world, where essentially it would produce and make formulas for different food companies, like Vega, Manitoba Hemp Harvest, even companies like Diageo, et cetera, right? Like all these different companies she's worked with and she had experience with. But when we brought her into the cannabis side of the business, originally even at Zenabis, the goal was specifically bringing her on to head up and lead up the 2.0 side of the business. She comes with a very strong background, again, from, removing the sales end. But if you look at formulation and commercialization, she has a high amount of degree and strength in those areas. And so when we brought her in, it was within approximately, I think, within that 8-month to a year timeframe that the company decided it wasn't no longer going to even try and launch anything for legalization of 2.0. And so then really from that point for both of us is where I don't want to see our dreams got crushed. We're like, oh man, we're like, okay. But if that, yeah. So again, this is where risk for some reason comes into mind and says, okay, if you're not going to go down this path, then I'm going to go create my own path. And so in the beginning of 2020, I resigned. And again, like I say, instead of a stable job, deciding to take the risk on, I left this in my mind at that time, specifically what was a stable job, essentially for nothing. And then starting from ground zero. And then it was funny, I sat down with Kirsten as we essentially both resigned around the same time in January, when they said they weren't going to do anything on the edible side. Because for her, again, that was her whole core function. That's what it was going to be there at Zenabis. But, we sat down, I remember we sat down for an afternoon, and she said, so what are you going to do? And I said, I still want to get into edibles. That's where again, like finding that intersection between cannabis and great food products is really where I want to get to.
Really, yeah.
Totally. And and I knew she was exactly in the same mindset. And she says, well, I do too. And she said, so, why don't we start something together? I said, we're thinking, we're reading each other's minds. And I said, yes. And that's really how it all started. That was on, I can't remember the exact date, but let's say within the first 2 weeks of January. A week later, we incorporated, and then we went off. We were off to the races to a degree. She started putting together some immediate formulations, some samples. And then by, I think it was like March, sometime in March, I was off and visiting customers and starting to essentially have pre-conversations with the different boards, etc. But that was when we decided to start. And then funny enough, we had no idea, obviously, COVID hits. And we were like, holy man, like literally I went on
happening.
Oh my gosh.
Global pandemic.
Totally, right? We're like just getting the ball rolling, putting things together. Formulations are happening in the background. I'm off visiting customers with a couple of those formulations, gummies in hand. And then I came home on, I believe it was like mid-March or whatever it was. I did a trip. I went to go do essentially like a countrywide trip. I went to go visit a bunch of customers, came back home. And then a couple days later, 2 days later, everything was shut down. They all of a sudden announced the shutdowns, et cetera. I'm like, holy, talk about timing. And then I got home and then I got super sick. And I don't know if it was COVID or not, but whatever it was, obviously I was at home anyways. And I was here locked up in my room. But we got hammered with it right in the middle of, in the beginning of starting our business. And yeah, trying to find, because the way our business is essentially built is we're not, we cannot be a license holder because we just didn't have the finances for it. We're starting again ground root, from the ground floor. And we're saying, hey, how are we going to do this? We don't have millions of dollars in the bank like public companies to start this up. We don't have a bunch of investor capital to start this up. How do we do this? How do we get this operation up and going? And so we came up with some very creative ways. And then we started looking for licensed partners by taking a lot of the formulations that we had essentially developed, taking it to licensed partners on top of meeting with provinces. Then we were starting to try and meet with LPs. And right at the beginning stage, when we started calling on the licensed producers, again, that same time frame, essentially when I was going off to visit customers, we were also doing calls and meetings with LPs. And everything came to a halt when COVID hit. All of a sudden, the doors started to close everywhere. And they're like, hey, we appreciate you coming through. We like what you guys are doing. We're just not letting anybody new on site. Too much risk. Closed door, closed door, closed door, closed door, everywhere.
Oh, man.
But you know what they say, right? With a closed door, there's somewhere and there's going to be a new open door. So we didn't give up. And a lot of people are, were telling us too, like, good luck trying to find anything in this time frame. It's going to be challenging. We said, yeah, we knew. Not that they were being negative, but they said, it's going to be very challenging. We said, yeah, we understand that. We're just going to keep pushing forward. And luckily, for both me and Kirsten, I think we got both of that. We both have the same mentality on that front. We haven't let any adversity or issue really block us in terms of what we do. Our mentality has always just been, we have to keep pushing forward, because the moment we stop, then we're dead.
Yeah.
We just have to keep pushing no matter what. So we did. We were fortunate to find a partner that wanted to move forward with us. Even after the whole COVID thing happened, they essentially built in new protocols at their facility, et cetera. And they said, okay, guys, look, we're gonna take a bit of a gamble here. Why don't you guys come on? Not a gamble, obviously, because they've taken the protocols. But, hey, we're going to let you guys on site. We need to know, if I remember correctly, I think we had to provide testing to show that we were, COVID negative. We had to obviously do the whole mask thing, et cetera. And then we were able to have a proper sit down meeting and start to get the ball rolling. And then it was agreed to that, yeah, we would move forward. We went into the whole contract phase, et cetera. So by August of 2020, we had struck a partnership. So it was within a short time frame, even when all the doors were closing. Again, it kind of, that door opened and then we were able to kind of get in. So August, the deal was struck. We brought in all of our equipment into our partner's side at that time, specifically around September, got the whole operation running, training, et cetera. And then by December, we were live. And then we started to ship our first products into market in the beginning of January 2021. So it's crazy whenever I think back on it now, I'm like, man, we're in year 4 as a business and we're in year 3 in market. So it's very exciting for both of us to think like, hey, look what we were able to do by not giving up. Because there could have been a lot of times along the entire route we gave up. We're like, no, we just got to keep same thing pushing forward. So yeah, COVID was definitely, I'll call it a bump in the road. We just let it be that, a bump in the road that's now, in the rearview mirror, and we just keep on going.
It's really a lesson in perseverance, and it's very inspirational, and I think that a lot of people can learn, take a lesson from this, because you could have given up. You could have said, well, COVID, what are we going to do? But you kept pushing and pushing, and look at you now.
Yeah, we're still going. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, and I think that's the funnest part about it too, is that even with all the challenge, whatever it may be in any business that has challenges, but as long as you find the fun in anything you're doing, even though there's all the work and everything behind it, but as long as you can find that one piece that you can attach yourself to where you're saying, I love doing this, and every moment of it, even the pain is worth it, and you that'll help you get through anything. And that's like for both of us, like there's been times, when I see her and I can see her, like, based on something that might be going on, she's down, and, I give her a big hug. I'm like, don't worry, we're going to get through this. And she does the same for me too, right? Like she can see, she's like, I can see you're stressed. And then, she'll support me. And I think that that's very important, especially in a partnership. Not everybody's going to see eye to eye every day. That'll never happen. And if you have that, then there's no growth in the business, because then you just all are yes people. But in the tough times, if they're, even with whatever you might not agree on, at the end of the day, again, from a business perspective is one thing, but that's where they always say, like, keep things personal and keep things business, which is never easy. It's easier said than done. But really, I think at the end of the day, as long as you have a support system within your own network and your own group, that's very essential and important. Because even in terms of us sometimes butting heads, I mean, that alone can cause so much friction that the company falls apart. But instead, it's, again, hey, when we're one suffering, we'll support the other. And, working together has definitely been different from working together as business partners versus just knowing each other over, 2 decades of working in the same industry.
Yeah, and the relationship changes, absolutely.
Totally, 100%. It is really like a marriage, and you'll find out really quickly if you can adapt and live with that individual or not, right? So, yeah, no, it's been, that's where, like, even then starting a business and owning a business has been eye-opening from so many different perspectives in terms of, like, how do you find a good partner? And I lucked out from that perspective. And I think, we could say that from each other's point of view, is we lucked out that we believe we found good partners in each other. Because sometimes, maybe some other people wouldn't like some of the things that I'm doing, or some people wouldn't like the things she's doing. And then you can have it dissolves and it kind of just breaks apart. But no, we've been fortunate to be able to stand strong together, and we just keep pushing forward together.
Of course, it's a rare thing, and you guys are very fortunate enough to have that, and that's really amazing. And I just think it's really great, and I think that just the fact that you are able to support and push each other and challenge each other, as you said, is also important. For sure.
Absolutely, yeah. She challenges me every day, and I challenge her every day.
And that's what you should be doing as business partner. Yeah. Absolutely. I would like to hear about how the edibles market, specifically in Canada, has kind of evolved, since you guys got started with White Rabbit. Of course, we had the whole COVID thing in between, but have you seen a lot of kind of growth? Has the market matured, or do you think there's still a lot of kind of gaps that need to be filled?
I still think there's a lot of gaps that need to be filled. Lots. So I've got a lot of different answers to this question. So number one is the market mature? In my opinion, no. And has it evolved? Yes and no. So the best way to answer that part specifically is what we're seeing today is a lot of repetition. So to evolve and innovate in a soft chew category to many a degree is challenging, right? Like when you're looking at it from an outsider's perspective and you think, what else can you do to a soft chew to make it innovative?
Yeah.
And what we're seeing today is, hey, I've got another strawberry. Yeah. Like we're seeing continuously is repetition at its finest. Like, in the grocery business, when you had a lot of the Me Too products, essentially like mirrored products of other CPG goods, like for example, coconut water, you'd find 10 different coconut water brands because it was essentially a fight for who could essentially control that coconut water category. Vita Coco, Blue Monkey, etc. And then you had a ton of other smaller companies come into play. Everybody was fighting on price at one point. The smaller guys more so. The big guys barely moved on price. And then at the end of the day, after it felt like, I can't remember how long it was, almost 8 years or so, maybe 5 years, whatever it was, of this coconut water battle that happened. It went from like a whole aisle ending grocery stores of coconut water to now essentially getting refined down to like 3 or 4 brands. And so whatever you've got, Blue Monkey, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. In cannabis, a bit of the opposite has happened, where initially the first brands were like Wana, as an example, have maintained and have been able to maintain their price position in market, which has been great. And yes, I'll call it market share percentage has eroded a bit, but they had such a huge percentage from the get-go because they came in at the right time and they had a good product. They have a good product, and they were able to capture the consumer and the consumer's wallet, and then from there, as more competitors came in and they started to lose a bit of that market share, they still control a significant portion of the market share. But what I like about what Wana's done too is they haven't sacrificed on price. And what we're seeing too much in the cannabis industry as a whole, this is not just the edibles. As the industry as a whole, there is price compression, but there's price compression where it makes 0 sense. And that means essentially, again, when you've got piggy banks from investors, you're sacrificing your dollars for the sake of market share. And you're saying, hey, I hold this much market share now. I'm whatever percentage of the market, but at what cost? Are you making money? If you're not making money, then I don't care if you hold number 1 or number 2 or number 3. I'd rather hold, in my opinion, and me and Kirsten both think the same way, I'd rather hold number 10 or number 12, but we're profitable. And I don't need to rely on, as a company, outside investors continuously floating my eroding bank account because we can't make it a profitable venture. So what we're seeing right now from, again, early days where, again, Wana's held a position and it made sense for both, and the consumer still is paying those prices, right? Like, and that's where we sit. Our product pricing is essentially lined up with where Wana is, because we see our product, and obviously as we go down this conversation, I'll expand on that a little, but our product is in a premium position in terms of quality ingredients and the attributes behind it. But when we look at the market today, again, what we're seeing is a lot of retailers and consumers, retailers and then licensed producers driving towards the lowest price possible in order to try and erode that market share. That's not, I understand obviously that's competition. That's the way the market works. It exists in grocery as well, where you see a lot of price erosion happen. But still, even on that side, we saw where like Vita Coco and Blue Monkey and these guys who still had a bit of a premium in their price still maintain a position. And they held, even at the end of the day, they're still, I'll call it the premium, they're still the selected brands that are on the shelf. So we'll see how cannabis continues to evolve, and then, kind of edible specifically, we'll see how it continues to evolve and really kind of play out this side of the point on this stuff. But really what we're trying to really do is say, hey, from an education perspective, there needs to be a lot more education around edibles. It doesn't exist today. Everybody's talking about terpenes for flower, but nobody's talking about ingredients for edibles. And the reality is the consumer does not have the same visibility into an edible product when they walk into a cannabis shop like they do in a grocery store. And the only reason I make those parallels is because in a grocery store, well, actually, first, before I go there, the reason I make those parallels is, number one, ingredients are absolutely important to many customers, especially today in the modern day and age we're in. Consumers are very conscious about ingredient input. That's why you see a huge growth behind brands like Midday Squares. You see huge growth behind, again, brands like Bolthouse Juices, etc. All these different types of products, because as time has gone on, consumers are more conscious about ingredients. And they pay to, again, as long as the quality is there, they're willing to pay those prices. But what's happening in cannabis is it's like that conversation's gone out the door. And now it's like, well, what's your price? And okay, so because I'm not playing in the low value side of the equation, that I'm not relevant anymore? No, that's not the case. What you need is education. You need to understand what are customers willing to buy, why are they looking to buy it, and here's how we fit into what that customer's where that customer's mentality is for purchasing. That's really where the market needs to move towards, instead of the conversation from an education perspective, because it's not education, it's just being priced. Like, it feels like right now that's where a lot of the market's going. We're seeing more and more players come in, and everybody that's coming in, I see it one after another, is just price drop, price drop, price drop. So yeah, in terms of that, where the gaps are, I think education is one piece for sure. And education really needs to evolve around edibles, where it's not just price specific. Again, customer can walk in a grocery store, they can read the ingredient deck. In a cannabis shop, they can't. So the education needs to evolve, again, because then that way the conversation can break just outside of price, and it can actually break into, hey, what are you looking for, etc. You can go into this whole conversation around, again, the product itself, and then really helping that customer find what they're looking for. Doesn't mean that our product or that one product is going to hit that customer's scope every time, but start rather from the top premium end and then work your way down. And so what we always like to even make from a comparables perspective is, do you guys have top shelf flower? If you guys carry top shelf flower, then consider our products like a top shelf soft chew. As White Rabbit OG is a top shelf soft chew, and here's how we identify the attributes to that. And then again, from the retailer's perspective, it's beneficial because it allows them to then capture that higher margin return. And then for the consumer's perspective, they're happy because then they get a better quality product. And then from our perspective, of course, then everybody's happy because then we're all moving more volume.
Absolutely. And I think you made a very interesting point, which is education. And I think that's just something that's an overarching kind of lacking thing in the industry, so I think that's very important, and I'm very glad that you brought that up. And in that case, like, how do you go about kind of educating? Is there anything that you guys are trying to educate your consumers, or the dispensaries that you're distributing to, or that kind of thing? Is there anything that you guys are doing to kind of educate people?
Yeah, for sure. So to the consumer, it's challenging because, like, our only route, at least for us, I haven't found anything else yet, but maybe I'm missing something. But anyways, long story short, Instagram's really our only way to really kind of get education out there. But we have to be very cautious about how we educate through Instagram. And then we've also got, obviously, I'll call it, you've got all these like blocks on Instagram. Like, if you mention a cannabinoid, we've gotten it back so many times. Like, boom, they shut they shut that post down. Luckily we haven't had our account shut down yet, but they have blocked the posts, and it's been like one after another. So that's really
that we just got our CanMar account just got deactivated about a week and a half ago, and we're trying to fight to get it back, but just deactivated, without warning. So we do also understand, and that's a big problem, is trying to educate people. We want to do it on social media because often that's the only way to reach people, but then social media platforms kind of say, no, sorry, you can't talk about this there, right?
Yeah, no, totally. So outside of Instagram, the other way that we've been looking to educate has been really around, again, the direct education directly with the bud tenders, directly with the retailers. And so what we have essentially is a breakdown on a national level of us and our competitors, and we do the ingredient breakdown, the quality attribute breakdown. We have all these different educational components to really highlight those points, because that's where we're really able to shine. And when we can get those one-on-ones and we can show those pieces for the people that understand it, it means a lot to them. And then there's some people, they just, again, they're going to be so focused on price, that's the only route they want to go. and then what can you do? You can't change everybody's mind. But again, that is a very key component to it is, yes, the education, direct communication with our customers, with the bud tenders, with the retailers, and being able to drive that education through is very important. And that's our best way of essentially driving growing our business. And in BC, I think we've done a good job of that. Obviously, there's a lot more to happen out here, and essentially because this is my backyard, because then I can actually get in the road, meet with customers, and have those conversations. But yeah, so we're trying to do the same thing and roll it out into the other provinces as well, as we're starting our relaunch, because we've just relaunched in other markets also. So right now, in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario, and the goal is to take that education platform and roll it out to those other regions as well.
Amazing. And Dave, on the subject of education, for people who are maybe listening to the show today, and if somebody would like to try edibles for the first time, and I think this is a very interesting question that I'm sure that you hear a lot. Even, for example, my parents would never understand this. So, for example, somebody who tries edibles for the first time, somebody who maybe hasn't consumed edibles or even cannabis before, what advice would you give them for how to dose, or how would you educate on first-time users on how to use your products for the first time? For example, if I had to give my mom an edible, what would educate her on that?
Yeah, no, for sure. There's obviously the question always gets asked all the time from an education perspective, and yeah, our answer is very simple to this one. The way we designed our product at the end of the day is really meant to fit the new consumer profile, which is all microdosing, right? So, like even with my parents, more so on the CBD side, but even my parents-in-law, etc. We've started them off with, again, from a microdose perspective, our products, which are always at 2.5 THC, and then they have different levels of CBD associated with them based on, again, what a person's looking for on the CBD side. But it's always the same old note, which is start low, go slow. So based on the way our products are always developed, it's 2.5 milligrams of THC max per piece. And so that's where I usually always start new customers and say, hey, look, take one piece, see how you feel. If over, again, that period of an hour, 2 hours, you don't feel anything, doesn't matter. Just wait till the next day and then take it up a notch from there. I never suggest anybody, hey, yeah, then after an hour, pop another one and let's see how you feel after, right? No. So
probably not the best advice.
yeah, just being safe. Yeah. So yeah, it's always, start with 2.5, see how you feel. If you don't feel anything that night, then try it again the next day. And then that's how I kind of evolve them into again, from a starting perspective. And I've had those conversations as well, like in the past, with other individuals too. And they're like, hey, I just don't know how to start. Like, what's the best way to start? Should I take 10? Should I take 5? I'm like, no. I'm like, don't start there. You don't know what your tolerance level is like. It's not the same as smoking. Exactly. So you're two different experiences completely. Start at 2.5. Best thing I can do is say start at 2.5, and then again evolve from there. If it doesn't work, if you don't feel it from that night, then again the next day, then take 2 and try it from there, and keep going, and kind of keep it going from there. So yeah, so that's usually my recommendation, and then they can go and enjoy, and usually we've always heard positive feedback. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's what you want. You want the positive feedback. And I'm also interested to talk a little bit about the type of consumer. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the target market for edibles is maybe a little bit different from, let's say, dry flower. So do you find there's a large percentage of older people that are purchasing your products, or what does that kind of look like for you guys?
Yeah, like our general target market is 35 plus. That's the way we design our products. And again, even just the way I was identified too is just based on the way the regulations are built as well in Canada. With a 10 milligram max, you're not going to find your general legacy consumer consuming 10 milligrams, number one. And legacy consumers can still essentially be in that 35 plus range as well. But even from that, the younger consumer, which is using more consumption through, again, combustibles, yes, there are some that are buying edibles as well, which is great, but the largest market share is 35 plus. So that's definitely where we're geared towards. Our product as well is much more, the White Rabbit OG brand specifically more so is geared more towards women. We have a lot of men who use our product as well. I'm a user of our product as well, but the message, like the branding, all those elements, even the flavor profiles are all meant to be a little more softer, dessert profiles, lighter beverage profiles, etc. And then we have another brand that we're going to be launching in the summertime that is more male focused. Again, similar, obviously, based on the way that the regs are built. We're still kind of, I'll call it, 35 plus, but actually we've widened the scope a bit more because we're looking now at I'll call it 25 plus, just based off of the attributes behind the brand itself, and then the types of flavor profiles we'll be putting into the brand. So we've got a unique strategy that we'll start rolling out here over the coming months, quarters, etc. That'll allow us to really start to break out these target markets. And then the branding will be specific to who we're going for, as well as the product profiles, the formats, all those different things. So yeah, that's in terms of consumer though. Yeah. So 35 plus for sure. A lot of older demographic. Absolutely. A lot of people who want it for sleep. So, we're very interested we've been interested for some time in the minor cannabinoids, but for us, it's always, again, like we were speaking earlier, it's not always about speed to market. Yes, there's a lot of the part that's speed to market, but it also has to, we have to be believers in it as well ourselves before we just put something on the market. And, so for example, we're just about to launch our first CBG product. We love CBG. It's amazing. And we've had some great experiences. CBN, we've been playing, kind of playing around with for some time. But I think maybe the dosing, how we've played around with it, hasn't been the right effect for both me and my partner and several other friends that we've been sharing with. The experience that we all had was migraines and headaches after. So we had to go back.
Don't want that.
Yeah. So we're okay. Let's go back to the drawing board, and maybe we need to change the dosing in different levels, right? So we're still playing with CBN. We think we've got something down now that we'll look to launch, somewhere down the line here. But for us, again, very interested in those minor cannabinoids, and we see a lot of, again, consumers, older consumers as well, again, from that end, who are looking for sleep. And again, 35 plus people are in their 40s and their 50s, and they're looking, they're having challenges sleeping at night, and so that's why they want some of these minor cannabinoids. Again, the consumer demographic, the age profile is quite wide as a whole, but we're not looking to, again, shotgun and just try and approach everybody. We have a specific demographic that we are looking to go after, and we understand it might not be everybody across the board, and that's fine. We know who we want to target, and those are the customers we're looking to acquire.
For sure. And you mentioned the flavor profiles, and that's a question I'm really interested in asking you, is a little bit more about some of the flavors that you guys have. First of all, what is your personal favorite? And second of all, the wildest or craziest flavor you guys have ever tested out?
Okay. Yeah. Turkey. That was the weirdest one, the craziest. Well, there's been we've done hundreds of different formulations for sure. But turkey was a wild one. And that one, there's a story behind that, but I won't go into that because it goes too long. There's turkey. We did a blue cheese one. It was I think it was blue cheese. There was a brie. There was blueberry and brie. We did a bunch of different, there's been some very unique flavor profiles, which were okay, that was cool to try, and we have it in our back pocket, but obviously that's not something we're going to try and launch. And then we've had, again, flavors that were oh, wow, these are amazing. We need to launch these ones. So they're in our product pipeline for some down the path, or they've already launched, or they're somewhere down the path. So yeah, no. And then we've had experiences even where the product tasted amazing, but then the naming conventions we gave to it weren't the most effective. So, again, it's a fine balance. We're finding, hey, not everything's going to kick off the way we want it to. Okay, maybe the naming convention did us some harm. We got to look at changing some of those things. We had a SKU which was amazing, and anybody who's tried it has come back and told us, "Oh my gosh, I love those gummies. Where are they?" And we're "Oh, it got discontinued. It just didn't perform." And then we find out, even in those conversations with some of those customers with bud tenders, and they're "Yeah, the name would have been what really scared people." They said it scared me too, but when you gave us the sample and we tried them, the non-infused stuff, the non-infused gummy sample, we tried it, oh my gosh, these taste incredible. So it was a product called strawberry fig balsamic, but because of the name balsamic in it, it scared a lot of people.
It put people off.
Totally, right? So we're okay, we should have called it something else, and we come up with some other names, and we're next time we know. Now as we come up with names, we're going to be a bit more cautious with some of those things. But yeah, in terms of flavors that I personally love, my favorite is, I have two different favorites. Our craft sour peach is, I love peach in general.
I'm
It's
also a big
amazing.
fan of peach.
Yeah. So all of our gummies are always made using real whole fruit puree and pulp. So that's like a really big key component for us as a brand, right? Where everybody else in the market's using artificial colors, artificial flavors, or just juices. And even though they're identifying as real fruit, it's just juice. Ours is actually using the pulp and the puree. And then everything that we use, we're very selective about the ingredients. The way we designed our products was so that if the regulations ever even changed to allow us to identify project non-GMO verified, gluten-free, etc., we could identify those things all in our package, because each ingredient, again, has been very meticulously chosen by my partner. Like, we identified together what we wanted, but again, from her background in terms of knowing, I'll call it working in the food industry from the ingredient side, she knows the suppliers, she knows where to find and source these things from, etc. We were very cautious about and meticulous about what we chose. So from the ingredient side, again, it's all whole fruit puree and pulp, no artificial colors, no artificial flavors. It's all non-GMO, allergen-free, gluten-free, preservative-free, and corn syrup-free. We never touch corn syrup or glucose. We use an organic rice syrup, so you can actually digest it and break it down. So for us, again, from the ingredient side, we're spot on. But then, if it's something is designed from an ingredient perspective to be great, customers then also want to know, is it going to taste great for me? And that's where we believe, again, to my business partner, 100 high fives, because I believe she nailed it 100 times over. So my favorite flavor profile, again, is the rapid sour peach, and then second to that is our raspberry white chocolate.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so the raspberry white chocolate gummy, and there's a fun story behind it too, but same thing, I won't dive too deep into that. But it's essentially a white chocolate cheesecake with raspberry cookie in a gummy. It's
wow.
Yeah, it tastes unbelievable. A lot of people they're like, what the hell, like a white chocolate in a gummy? And then they try it, and I'd say 90% of the people are like, whoa, I did not expect that. And then they end up loving it. And then, of course, again, there's always a percentage of people that they're just like, hey, it's not my thing, and that's fine. But a big chunk of everybody that we've ever sampled it to, I'd say 90% are all like, whoa, as soon as they try it, they're like, this is amazing. And it really is. Like, you have to try it to understand it and to get it. But all the flavors, you get these beautiful fusions of these flavors that all come together, and they just mesh beautifully. And then, you're like, man, I could eat these. I could eat a lot of these. Yeah.
Maybe dangerous, because you might just, it's just keep eating.
Totally. Well, that's exactly. We've had a lot of people reach back out to us, and they're like, hey, where can I buy your gummies non-infused? And I'm like, you can't. It's only infused product, right? We don't sell in the grocery shelves. We only sell in the cannabis shops. And they're like, what? I'm like, can I buy stuff from you? And I'm like, no, I can't sell you we don't sell non-infused. We don't have packaging for it.
Non-infused edible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I mean, we've had a lot of we've had phone calls, emails, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, man, I ate it and I had a great experience, but then I just want to keep eating more. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. I appreciate the feedback, but yeah, no, we don't sell them non-infused, not yet. Yeah.
Well, that's how you're onto something good, I think, right? That's amazing.
Yeah,
and
totally.
it's really great that I really love the all natural kind of no corn syrup, because a lot of these edibles and gummies and products that you find are just kind of full of these things that are essentially bad for us. So it's really great to have this alternative that apparently tastes incredible. I'll have to come and taste it out for myself. And that isn't full of all of this really horrible processed corn syrup and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like for us, the way we look at it, I mean, no different than a lot of other categories that there's been evolution in, is where we see a lot of in the gummy space specifically, there hasn't been a lot of innovation, right? It's been the big sleeping giant. It's been the same for the last 10, 15 years, other than Smart Sweets, who came in and changed things up over the last 5-10 years. But Smart Sweets definitely has its customer base. We wanted to still give customers who want to indulge and have something to reward themselves with, something that tastes amazing. And that's really, for us, that's super important, right? Again, all those clean ingredient attributes have to be there, but then it has to taste incredible as well. And so the way we looked at the market was, like, even as we were coming into it, was, what is it that customers are looking for today? Again, we identified all those key ingredient points and the health attribute triggers. Okay, and then what's missing from cannabis today? Like, when we look at the cannabis, is it hitting any of those triggers today? No. Again, we identified where each of those competitors are, each of those other products are. No. And then we start to look at what fits like a Whole Foods, like a Choices Market, et cetera, kind of profile. And that's where we really wanted to kind of target. So it was kind of finding this fun balance in all these different things and saying, again, we know where we come from. We know what we want to deliver on. Is there anything anywhere, whether it's in cannabis or in grocery, that really hits this trigger for this category? No. And so that's where we found a beautiful sweet spot. And, from our perspective, we're developing a category within a category is how we look at this, because there's nobody else that's really competing in the same area that we're in. Yeah. So, we're really looking to not copy or do anything that anybody else is doing. And we're happy with where we are. And we want to obviously happy in the sense of the products that we're developing to where we are. We obviously want to keep evolving from the sales side and from the business side to expand our distribution. But yeah, really from that end, we're very happy with the product that we developed, with what we brought to market, and then looking from this point really to kind of evolve it and continue growing. Right. But yeah, I think that it's been fun, and really, again, like we're looking to define very differentiated, where everybody else is dropping another strawberry or another mango or just a single flavor profile. We're doing like the raspberry white chocolate's one. We have our new CBG SKU is a rapid matcha banana smoothie in a 1 to 2 CBG. It tastes beautiful. We had our blackberry divine. It was previously blackberry and merlot. Health Canada made us change the name, but it's a blackberry divine 1 to 4 now. So we're very much about fusion and combining these unique flavor profiles together.
I love that. I think that, that's exciting because it's something different for sure. And that's what you don't want the same old thing all the time. I mean, all of these flavors sound great, and I'm booking my ticket to BC tomorrow. I'll be there soon.
Yeah, that's right. Come out this way. Yeah.
But Dave, as we kind of start to wrap things up here today, just looking a little bit ahead towards the future, you have mentioned a few things in the pipeline. Is there anything else that you're excited about for the coming next year ahead? Anything that you'd like to share with us today for the future?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing I think everybody is going to be excited about this as a whole is the change in hopefully regulations where Health Canada decides to kind of turn things around. I think that just like when they were developing the regulations originally, I think that a lot of markets, both provincially and then even the government, was looking at the US and kind of, even though it wasn't on a federal level, I think they were looking at some state by states for some things in terms of what was legalized, how is it working? Is there any, was there any negative effects to consumers, et cetera? I hope that Health Canada can realize that from a dosing perspective, that 10 milligrams doesn't really hit the mark for the majority of consumers.
Yeah.
Even for those consumers that are buying it right now, I'm positive that they'd like higher doses, not so much so that they consume higher doses, but then essentially in a single purchase, they're getting more dose. They essentially have that for whether it's a week's supply to a month's supply in a single purchase, and then they have that there as they need it, and then they can consume and then go back and buy accordingly, right? But right now, based on the way it is, that's fine. We are where we are, but really in terms of excitement, I think that's really what's got me excited, and it's got us excited as a business, is when the evolution comes to allow up to 100 milligrams max, because I think that's the max it'll go to. And then I think, again, from a max perspective, when we look at states that are in that same 100 milligram max, it's usually 10 milligrams max per piece. That's where we see the regs change into. It's like, okay, yeah, hey, the 10 milligrams per piece makes sense, but keep it to per piece with a maximum of, with a minimum of 10 gummies in a bag, right? So that's where I think everybody in the industry, from the edibles point of view, is the most excited. If those rules change over the next year or 2 years, as Health Canada is under review right now in regards to the cannabis regulation. So I think that's definitely what's got us on the edge of our seats in terms of thinking, hey, can this change?
Big time. I think that will make an absolute world of a difference, for sure. And Dave, another thing, of course, you, as you said before, you kind of love to get on the ground floor of things. You're kind of a serial entrepreneur, if you will, and you had that mindset. So do you have any advice for other people who kind of want to get into this space, who want to, take the dive into cannabis, start a cannabis business? Any wise words of wisdom today?
Yeah. There've been some great posts that have been out there when they say, like, what's the best way to make $1 million in the cannabis industry? Start with 2 million. No, really, I think that the best advice I can give anybody is just always do your homework. Like, if you're going to jump into something and you decide you want to get into a market, make sure you understand the market, where it's at, and then do your homework. to be able to know that, there is space in the marketplace for what you're looking to bring. Because if you don't do your homework and you just say, hey, look, I made this product, whatever it may be, and I'm going to come into market and then you just think you're going to take things over, it doesn't always work that way, right? So everybody has to do their homework. So, I mean, that's usually the best thing. And then on top of that, it's always make sure you have that support system in place, because you're going to go through the challenges. Everybody goes through challenges. It's just the name of the game. So you just always have to have a support system in place that's going to have your back, that's going to keep motivating you to push you forward. Again, whether it's your business partner or if you're a solo entrepreneur, then it's, again, a support system in terms of friends or family or, a spouse, et cetera, whatever it may be. But there's something there to support you along the way, because sometimes it can feel dark and it can feel bleak. So you need something to keep you motivated and moving along. For me, it's my family. The family always keeps me motivated. And obviously at the same time, like, I'm excited about all the different things I'm doing, but I think that's always the number one thing for me in the back of my mind. That's always got me motivated to want to keep on driving and pursuing more.
And I think that's true for almost anything in life, right? To have a good support system behind you, it really makes a massive difference. It's people who raise you up and push you forward, and when you're down, say, "Come on, you can do this. You can." So I think that's very, very true. I totally agree with you on that one. And on that note, Dave, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on the CanMar Morning Talk Show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. Any final thoughts, anything you would like to add before we end things here today?
No, I want to go to South Africa. That's about it. Yeah. Yeah. I've been wanting to go for some time. Like, it always looks so beautiful. I remember the mountain with the tabletop, etc. Well, I can't remember what they called it. The table.
Table Mountain. Yep.
That's it. Table Mountain. Yeah. And then I think it was Johannesburg Park, or I can't remember. There's a national park.
Kruger National Park. Yeah. Well, you've done your homework. You want to come to South Africa.
Yeah. I've heard some beautiful and amazing stories. So that's one of the places on my bucket list, and hopefully somewhere down the line I'll get the chance to go. But no, other than that, I appreciate the time as well. I appreciate the conversation. But I'm sorry if I wasn't as upbeat as I usually am. It's this morning. I'm not a very good morning person. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. I just want to make sure. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, I hope it wasn't, because again, like for me, the mornings are. I'm not, like I said, I'm not much of a morning person. So the morning always takes me a little bit of time to kind of get going. Yeah, get the motor running.
Not all because I'm in South Africa and it's the evening here.
Yeah.
That's 100% my fault.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Awesome. But I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation. It was wonderful chatting with you, Melissa. And I look forward to hopefully staying in contact as well. And I appreciate you and the entire CanMar team.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I'll let you know when the episode is going to be released. I'll send you the links. We'll put it up on our socials as well, and we'll do all the sharing and the good stuff. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. It was really good. You're actually the first person I've spoken to about edibles, so that was actually really fun and interesting and exciting for me. So thank you so much for sharing.
Awesome. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you. So maybe we'll do a follow-up.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. Have a good one. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Have a great day.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching or listening to the CanMar Morning Talk Show. Join us next time for your weekly dose of cannabis and psychedelics updates from the industry's experts. But before you go, don't forget that at CanMar we specialize in recruitment and licensing and compliance for highly regulated industries such as cannabis, hemp, and psychedelics. Visit us at canmar.io to book a free consultation with one of our specialists today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button to hear more juicy insights from the movers and shakers of the cannabis and psychedelics industry.